All right. I think we got all our panelists, and we have a good amount of folks that have joined here. It is about 12:01 here Central Time. And I think that's a record for us. We usually start about 3 or 4 minutes later. But thanks for joining. You are in the right place if you are here to talk about short-term rental interior design. We often talk about ROI on spend from an accounting perspective. Here, we're going to talk a little bit about the qualitative side of that. And we have your team here, as usual, Shared Economy Tax, Lucy, Jacob, and our special guest, Jennifer, who we will introduce in just a second. So with that, Jacob, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. I do appreciate it. And Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us as well. But yeah, just quick who we are. I know that a lot of you guys do know us, familiar faces, hopefully. But starting left to right, we do have Miguel, of course. He's our founder here at SCT. You have myself. So if I haven't met you guys, I'm an account executive. I typically talk to all of our clients along with a gal named Renee. And then, of course, Jennifer's joined by us today. She's a founder of her own company, and we'll get into more details about, what she does day in and day out, all that good stuff.
Very good. Well, yeah, actually, right here, Jennifer, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself? Everyone's kind of sick of hearing from Jacob and I. First of all, I want to say thank you for joining. I know we got you in maybe a week ago, and it's been great getting to know you and hear about your business. So, yeah, just high level, tell us a little bit about Jennifer Faris Interiors.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. My name is Jennifer. I am the founder of Jennifer Faris Interiors. So I specialize in interior design, focusing primarily on short-term and mid-term rentals. I do dabble in some residential design as well, but I really love the industry, have a hefty background in the industry. So I love to work with investors on setting up their Airbnbs. So that's what I do.
Fantastic. And we're going to drill down on all of these topics in just a minute, but I am curious in terms of, how and why you got started. What called you to entrepreneurship? Was there someone in your family that was an entrepreneur? What inspired you and eventually got you comfortable to do your own thing?
Yes, it runs in my family. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My husband's also an entrepreneur. My parents are entrepreneurs. So I think that kind of plants the seed at a young age. But I also have worked, for corporations. I actually started working for a luxury vacation club at one point. It was sort of a dream job. I got to travel to some of the greatest most beautiful places in the world and help set up homes for individuals to stay in. So that definitely sparked my love for not only the travel industry, but for design as well. I have circled around, I've worked in different aspects of property management, but really I am a creative at heart. And in addition to design, I'm also a photographer. So that's part of my package that I offer, and something that I love to really just hammer to people how important photography is for your Airbnb listing, right?
Absolutely is. Actually, our last session was just supposed to be about operations, and I feel like we spent 10-15 minutes on photography. So certainly
Yeah.
agree with that. Well, fantastic. Great to have you on. And again, as we move forward, we'll get into some Q&A to learn a little more about you.
Great.
All right, going through the agenda. So yeah, typically you guys know how we like to run the show here. We'll start with some Q&A, and then we'll get into Jennifer's presentation, just essentially, of course, what it is, mastering STR renovations design. We'll have closing thoughts, some key takeaways, and then we'll lastly lead off with Q&As, hopefully that you guys have some questions for us to answer. So if you guys have any, please feel free to put them in the chat. Lucy here will be noting them so we can get to them at the very later end of the webinar. Interesting fact of the day. Okay, so let's see. The IRS also collected nearly 457 billion in income taxes before refunds from businesses in the fiscal year of 2023. Pretty interesting stuff there. More than 213.3 million returns and other forms were filed electronically. These represented 78.6% of all filings.
Yep.
For individual tax returns,
Well,
90.7%
I
were
think,
filed.
Jacob, I'm going to cut you off because we never want to read all the text in there, but I think the main takeaway, like from these, is number one, I would say we haven't collected enough for what we're spending as a country.
Okay.
457 billion in, but the deficit's in the trillions. Point two is we have about 80% of all tax returns are in. So this is where we create the FOMO. If you haven't filed your tax return, I know that we're on it. If you're waiting for us to get back to you, feel free. You have permission to follow up. Say, hey, I was on a webinar. Miguel said I could follow up. But if you as a client are on this and you haven't filed and you haven't given us your stuff, this is your semi-friendly, semi-firm reminder to get on that. So,
Yeah.
Get those returns in.
Yes, great point. You guys should have received if you are missing information. I definitely reached out to you guys requesting it. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself directly, and I'll make sure we get you to the right places.
Yeah, and I love the idea that like during this webinar, like we'll get like a bunch of activity of like clients, like here's my W-2. That would be a secondary successful webinar, of course. Primary making sure we get Jennifer's story.
That's exactly right. Miguel, do you want to do the disclaimer or you want me to get it?
Basically, anything you hear on this call is general. Do not do anything without talking to an advisor. And if you want to DIY it, do it at your own risk.
Mm-hmm.
So Q&A, let's just go to the Q&A slide so people don't get distracted, Lucy. And I think this is kind of where we want to go back. So let's go back to the Q&A slide. And I think this is typically where we want to just start kind of painting the picture about the world you live in, Jennifer, and just to kind of paint the world that we live in. We primarily work with the shared economy. So part of that is car share, but a big part of that is Airbnb. And some people do both. Some people do Turo and Airbnb. They're kind of the full package. But yeah, so a lot of our clients are sometimes they've got like a standard W-2 job where they're corporate, and then they've got this little entrepreneur scratch that they need to itch, or itch that they need to scratch, and they launch an Airbnb. So a lot of our clients are, 3, 4, 5 years into it. They've weathered the storm. They've seen COVID, and they're often dealing with, do I set up another property? Do I invest in my current property? So that's kind of the scope. And then of course we have some serial investors. Those are definitely the minority. We really focus on the small operator. That's where our passion lies. So, for the small operator, for those that know the Airbnb space, they know what they're, tell me a little bit about how you think about interior design.
Yeah. So, and we'll get into this a little bit into the slides, but so much of it has to do with who you're trying to attract, and understanding why it is that they are going to that particular area, why it is that they are renting an Airbnb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that alone is going to solve so many questions as to how to go about designing the space. So, and as I mentioned, I'll get into that a little bit more, dig into that. But yeah, I think that just understanding who it is, like that's the first thing. Whether it's a space in your home, a basement, or a space above your garage, or in your backyard, or whether it's somewhere that's a couple hours away from you or across the nation, you really need to understand the area and who it is that's visiting that area first. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I know we have some Q&A questions that we already got from the audience that Jacob, maybe you can ask, but I want to throw just a random question at you.
Yeah.
I like wall art. I'm actually a big fan, and I can't afford any of the really good stuff, so I'll get like the replicas or the copies, and every now and again I'll get something at an art show. Like I'm just curious, like does wall art matter? I mean, and I know you're talking about kind of the profile, but you know, even if you got like a cheap place, I mean, should we go out and get something like really nice and put it on the wall? I mean, yeah. How do you think about art on the wall specifically?
Oh my gosh. Yes, art matters. Yes, your walls matter. Walking into a place that has big blank walls is just such a lack of personality. Your artwork should definitely reflect the area in where your Airbnb is. It should also speak to your client, to your guest. Size matters when it comes to artwork. Placement matters when it comes to artwork. Yes, it's like the frosting on the cake, right? Nobody wants to eat dry cake. So, yes, artwork matters. That is a great question. I'm glad you asked it.
I know it wasn't on there,
And
and
there's also creative ways to go about what's that?
I wanted to throw it in, so I'm glad you're receptive to it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Mhm. There's also
Kind of.
other creative ways to fill up your blank walls. There's people are using wallpaper now and it's peel and stick. So it's not permanent. You're not permanently damaging your walls. If it suddenly goes out of style or you want to change it up, it's not a problem, right? Tapestries. Framing your artwork can be as cheap as IKEA and Target, or you could take it somewhere professional. So it doesn't always have to be the most expensive thing. Don't shy away from it because you're afraid of the cost, for sure.
And something I've learned is that the frame can sometimes elevate like a
Mhm.
regular non-canvas print, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes I've learned that buying when you have an expensive like picture or whatever at IKEA, the cost is really the frame, not so much the print.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Also, and I know I hope I don't ruffle too many feathers here, but I'm not the biggest fan of blank canvases, of unframed canvases on the wall. There is a time and a place for it, but I think it's sort of it looks unfinished to me. So you can frame canvases, and I just think it elevates it just that much more. Just helps make it look finished. Yep.
That is controversial, but yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, I know.
Good to hear.
Sorry. Sorry. That's just an opinion.
So for some of our clients that are just dabbling into, designing their first short-term rental, let's just say, what would you give them as far as advice when designing a short-term rental versus a personal, house or property?
Mm. Yeah, what's interesting about that is you can actually be a little more adventurous. People tend to hold back when it's their own personal space.
Mhm.
They have a hard time making decisions. They want it to be more neutral. But when you have an Airbnb, that's when you can really let your personality come out. I mean, obviously, again, it needs to match, the experience that you're trying to provide for your guest. But you can really, go bold with a fun wall in the bathroom with wallpaper, or some funky furniture in the corner, or like I mentioned, a tapestry or lighting. You can really kind of experiment and have fun
Mhm.
because, it's not permanent in your own home. So I feel like people can be more adventurous when it comes to decorating their Airbnbs,
Gotcha. So
and
think
it
out
helps them
the
stand
box.
out on the list. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think too, as an Airbnb guest, you're a little more like when I'm looking around, you're a little more interested in the things that pop out. So like neon signs, for example, like I've got teenagers, they would love to have a neon sign. I can't do it. I like, no, guys, like do something else, like do the band stuff. But I kind of like them in Airbnbs. You walk into an Airbnb, you see like a sign that says like I'm in Austin, like, howdy, y'all. I'm like, nice. So, yeah, I think in some ways too, like, there's things that as a guest you appreciate that you wouldn't in your own home. So, you can almost take that same logic. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Go bold, be adventurous. That's what's going to attract people and make you stand out from your competition.
And then for you, like I know that everybody has their own style. What would you say that your kind of, design style is? And then kind of two-part question to that. What's like a non-negotiable if you're designing an Airbnb to have, if there are any?
hmm Good questions. As far as my style, I am very fluid based on, again, my clients' needs. And how the design is going to serve the most, the guests in the best way possible. So, if you're designing so for example, right now I'm working on a penthouse apartment building in downtown Denver in what's called the Rhino District. So this is a very Art Deco building, and kind of has these sort of Gatsby-esque vibes to it. So we had a lot of fun with the design there, right? That's not going to fly in a cabin in Estes Park, right? It's not. So I'm very fluid with my design. That's actually why I love this job so much, is because it's not copy and paste. It just like lights my creativity up each time to figure out what's going to be the best design for any given particular space.
Mhm.
And then I forgot the second question. What was the second question? It was a two-part.
Yeah, no, no worries. And then, like, if you were, because you kind of answered it a little bit in part
Mhm.
one, I guess, but part two is like, if is there any like statement item or piece of furniture that you just
Oh,
love that needs to be that you would recommend, I guess, in an Airbnb property, short-term rental?
right. And I will kind of get into this a little bit as well in the slides, but I would say first impression is everything. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So, whatever it is, when your guests are walking up to your door or open up the door, whatever it is that they see, there needs to be something that brings a smile to their face.
Interesting. So right among arriving, walking in, that's the most important thing. Interesting.
I
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've never thought of it that way. Okay, let's see. We have, I think, a few more questions here for you. So let's ask, what are some inexpensive things that you can do to improve your house right away?
Mhm. Accessories. So pillows, blankets, even rugs. You
Mm.
don't have to put the most expensive rug in your Airbnb. I mean, there's so many great washable rugs now. Um, and artwork. We talked about artwork. It does not have to be expensive. So those items will elevate a space. Even if you have really bland furniture, it's gonna pull it to the next level. Those are the things that help you stand out and, again, avoid that sort of copy paste from every other listing that's out there. Accessories really matter,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they're cheap.
And
Yep, exactly.
and can you pair like your favorite vendors or place to get those cheap accessories?
Yeah, so here it depends on if I'm shopping online, which that's probably a better way to answer this question since we're all coming from different areas. I would say, places like Target, Wayfair is a big one. I'm sure a lot of your investors work or shop on Wayfair. IKEA is a good one if you have one nearby. See, the thing about accessories too is you don't wanna spend too much money on them because a lot of things are breakable, so you just wanna be able to replace it without sweating too much, right? You just wanna be able to replace, and inevitably, no matter how much you spend on a pillow cover, eventually it's gonna pill, it's gonna get stained, whatever, so don't spend too much money on stuff like that. I love, I mean, even Amazon has great options for accessories and pillow covers and blankets and things that you can easily replace, whether it's that you want to change the style or whether it's that they've ended their useful life.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose that's a really good point. I have an Airbnb in Rosarito, so we went with a theme that was very beachy, and we got a lot of little like kind of clay Mexican relics, and they're really cute.
Mhm.
And the first time we got like the coolest stuff we could find, it wasn't that cheap, and of course they all broke. And like once they chip,
Yes.
they don't look great. Um, so next time around, we're like, all right, we're just gonna go to the cheap section and just pull a bunch because it still meets the theme. So I think that was a great point.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And one tip too, if you find a piece that you really love, but that you're just not quite comfortable spending that money on, I'm sure everybody's aware of the Google photo search. So just grab a screenshot of it and in the Google, click on the camera, pull that screenshot in, and it'll pull up all the knockoffs, so you can find things that way that, look a lot like what you really want to put in there, but don't want to spend the money to do that. So,
That's a great tip. I think we have time for one more question from the pre-webinar. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah. So last one is just what helps you stand out from the competition. Increasing your occupancy rates. I think that's the most important thing that our clients are trying to achieve. Just making sure that they're rented out all the time, making sure that they're maximizing on profits. So, what would you say helps stand out?
Yep. I would say that's a two-part question. One is comfort, which is a little bit more boring, but super important. And the second is, the design aspect of knowing who your guest is,
Mm.
right? And that actually is the perfect segue to my first slide. I don't know if we want to skip there. I know you had
Yeah.
the QR code for the budget guide. Maybe we can come back to that later. But so uh,
Lucy, let's go to the slide 1.
Perfect. Yep. So driving revenue by knowing your market, right? Who are you trying to attract? And I'm sure everybody's saying anybody that will come, right? But the truth is, if you cast a super wide net, sometimes it's not as great as like dangling something really delicious in front of somebody, right? Like it's better to know who your avatar is, and you can learn that by, first studying the location. Figure out, why do people come to your area, right? If you have a 3-bedroom home near a ski resort, it's probably going to be a family or a group of friends. They're going to probably love the outdoors and be spending a lot of time out there. And those are things that you'll consider in your design. If you have a townhome near Red Rocks, right? That's our gorgeous, famous amphitheater here in Colorado. And you have a townhome near there, you're probably attracting young, fun concert goers. So you're going to consider that in your design, right? If you have a condo in the city near a major hospital, you might want to consider doing midterm rentals for doctors and nurses that are traveling. And that's going to affect your design as well, right? So, all of these are really going to help you to attract people that not only who are already coming to the area, but who will want to come back, right? And who will leave you rave reviews, who will tell their friends about your space. So, this is all how you generate more bookings, is by knowing who your avatar is in the first place. And if you need help figuring this out, the best thing to do is just to go to Airbnb, plug in your area and the same specifications as your house, or your listing, how many it sleeps, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, etc., and read the reviews of your competition, right? You want to figure out, what do people love about my competition? And also, what are they getting bad reviews on? Right? That's going to be just as valuable as what they love. And so you can take that information and figure out, what in your space are you going to be able to make stand out to attract that person, right? So, continuing on that thread of standing out, you have all entered the, investment world, and that is such a great thing. But you may or may not understand, you're also in the hospitality industry, right? Which is a tough industry, and it's got major competition. So, what you want to do again is make sure that you are directly affecting your guest experience with your design. While we all know, just a couple of years ago, Airbnbs were booked solid. Um, they were also flooding on the market, right? Tens of thousands at a time, more Airbnbs popping up. And now people have kind of pulled back a little. I know a lot of people are traveling internationally, and the market is flooded. So, how do you make yourself stand out? Do not discount design here. So, the majority of renters on Airbnb are millennials. And two things that we know about millennials are that they love to share their experiences on social media, right?
Mm.
And aesthetics matter. This is a generation where aesthetics really matter. So it is worth making at least one space in your home or outside of it Instagram worthy. Okay, so maybe that space, as you were talking about earlier, Miguel, is a neon sign in a game room, or maybe it's one of those really cool egg chairs hanging from the living room. Maybe you have a beautiful view out on the deck, so you set up Adirondack chairs around a fire pit so they can roast marshmallows and take their really cool Instagram shot. So,
Mhm.
this is free marketing for you. This is creating an experience for them that they'll remember. And it really pays off in the end. It
All
pays you back for what you've invested.
those are all like amazing ideas right there. That's just from the top of your head, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
That was great.
And then the last thing on this list, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but first impressions matter so much. Okay. So I had an experience recently where I walked in and right kind of in the little hallway was a card table with some old magazines on it. It was just so unwelcoming. It was kind of strange. It looked like it had been left there accidentally, but it wasn't. And what that does is it just sort of it unconsciously, kind of this is your first impression. So as you walk throughout the place, if your first impression was kind of meh, then you're going to see things through that lens, right? You're not going to be as forgiving. Whereas if you first walk in, and I'm not saying that every every Airbnb has the opportunity to have some grand first impression, but at the very least, just consider what they're walking into, right? Make sure it's clean. Make sure you have a doormat that's not all stained up, those kinds of things, right? Because if you walk in and your first impression is great and you've made that person feel welcome, then they're going to look around and see all the great things in your place.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious, like when you think about a space that gave you that wow moment when you first walked in, Jennifer, like does anything stand out from recent memory?
Yeah, I would say unobstructed views. If you happen to walk in and there's a window with a view, somehow highlighting that, making sure that when your guest walks in, the curtains are pulled so that that's what they see.
Mm.
I would also say, to be honest, here's actually I'm kind of answering my own question while I'm thinking about this. What stands out to me more is the negative experiences.
Wow.
Hmm.
Right? I can't really think of too many great experiences, like, maybe, it was just like, "Oh, this place is beautiful," but I really can remember the negative experiences. We rented a gorgeous villa in Mexico for spring break and walked in, and the air conditioning was not on. We had to find the breaker because half of the lights wouldn't come on,
Uh,
and we could tell that they had just sprayed for, bugs because there was dead bugs all over the floor.
Oh.
okay.
So, that was our first impression, and it was we were tired. We had traveled all day and, we had to work when
Mm.
we got in the house. So, things like that. Just again, always considering your guest experience through design. Yep.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a
Okay,
empathetic
next
approach.
step. Oh, go ahead. Yes, yes, exactly. I mean, we all travel. What do you love? You have to think about that, what you're providing. It's not when you think you're saving money, sometimes it's that expression, spending a dollar to save a dime, right? It's going to bite you in the end. And so that actually perfectly segues to this slide. So where to invest and where to save, people don't always know. And of course, you want to save as much money as possible, and you don't want to over design your space just because it's beautiful. You want to make sure that you invest in the right pieces and you can save money in other places. So, number one is comfort. Again, I've mentioned this because there is nothing that will kill your potential nightly rate faster than bad reviews. And one of the most common bad reviews I see has to do with uncomfortable mattresses.
Hmm.
Right? Do not scrimp on the mattress. I mean, wherever people's heads are laying or their butts are sitting, you want it to be comfortable. Especially somebody who's booked like 5 nights in your place and they can't sleep, I mean, that's just miserable. You don't want your guests to be super excited to go home because they're uncomfortable sleeping. Instead, you want them to wish they had booked an extra night. Seating, if you advertise that your space can sleep six, but you only have enough seating in your living room for three people, that's a no no. I mean, people don't always mention that one in reviews, but That's just uncomfortable, for people to have to if everybody wants to watch a movie at night and people have to sit on the floor, that's not good. Or you have people that are having to separate into different rooms because there's not one room that will hold them all. So make sure that your seating matches how many heads you say you're sleeping, right? It's not worth it to try and pack more people in if they're not going to enjoy their experience in the space. And the last thing is durability or wearability. So figure out which items your guest will come into contact with the most: couch, bed, dining chairs, and invest a little bit more. Because you don't want to sit on a dining chair and it's kind of creaking and you're not really sure if it's going to hold your weight the whole time, or maybe there's a couch that just has stains on it and they don't come out, right? Nobody wants to sit on that. You don't want to like walk into somewhere and just feel the fact that many people have stayed there before, right? You want to feel like it's fresh and new and for you, right? So choose wisely when it comes to investing in these three areas, and it's going to help your ratings tremendously. So the design installation process, there is a few different ways to approach this. You can, if you have, the means, hire a full service designer. This is obviously the easiest way. They're going to take you from start to finish, and all you get to do is look at the design boards and say, yes, great, and block off the time for them to install it. They're going to handle everything, right? Designing, procurement, receiving, storage, quality, assembly and installation. It is the most expensive option, but at the end of the day, it frees you up to focus on what you do best, right? There's also sort of an in between where you can do e-design, where you're just getting the drawings and design boards. They're going to design the space for you and source the furniture and then hand it over to you, right? So you do the ordering and everything else I had in that list, which is a lot, but if you're willing to do it, that's great. That's going to not only, this combination is great because you're getting good design, but you're also saving a little bit of money. And then there's the DIY, right? And I know a lot of people like to do it, and that's great. Just know that it's a lot, right? So the first thing you want to do is figure out your budget. And that way you can determine which items you're going to be able to spend more money on and where you need to save money. And then you need to create a list of what you'll need. Okay. And if you download my free budget guide, it's going to have a list of, what you need in each different room. So that helps you. And then you will begin to work on concepts, and we'll get to the investment next. That slide's a little ahead, but and what I mean by concepts is taking your like little screenshots of the furniture that you are thinking of placing and putting it together on what I call a design board. You can use a Word document, right? But what you want to do is make sure that that furniture all looks good together. Right? Is the flow of your room going to work? And then don't forget scale. Okay? There's nothing worse than ordering a couch that doesn't fit in the space, or ordering dining chairs that have arms but they don't slide under the table, so they're sticking out, or getting a coffee table that's too small, or I could go on and on and on. Scale is important. Next up is ordering. You'll want to keep track, whether it's a spreadsheet or a Word document. You want to keep track of everything that you've ordered, your budget, and its expected arrival time, because chances are you're ordering from different vendors and it's all going to come at a different time. Another tip is to make sure to inspect items immediately when they're delivered, because a lot of places have short windows for return for damaged items.
Yep.
So you want to be sure of that. Yep.
Yeah, double
Um,
thumbs up that one.
yeah.
I've
Yeah.
definitely left things and then checked them later, and it was like, oh, you're past the warranty
Slide through
period.
it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yep. That's a bummer. Um, Also, when you're ordering items, make sure you understand what is going to need to be assembled, because you're going to have to budget the time for that. You know what I'm talking about? The Allen key, right? That's how you put together Target and Wayfair furniture. And again, nothing wrong with that. But it is going to take up, more of your time to get that assembled. And we know that time is money, right? Install day. I should actually call that install days, because often, depending on the size of your Airbnb, it can take 2 to 3 days. And then last but certainly not least is photography, right? So don't forget photography. It's crucial that that first photo that you choose for your listing grabs the attention of people as they're scrolling through the hundreds of Airbnb options that they have. And choose, I would hire a professional photographer for that. It's definitely worth it. You will get your money's worth for that. And not somebody that necessarily, shoots newborn photos, but somebody that actually knows how to do interior shots, because it's one thing to capture a kiddo, it's another thing to photograph a living room that has really tough lighting, right? You want somebody who knows how to manipulate that to make that living room look really great. Okay, last slide. We've kind of been sitting here for a while. Sorry. The investment, how much? Everybody wants to know how much, right? And I have such an unsatisfying answer because it depends, right? It depends on your square footage. It depends on the quality of furniture you are willing to install. So again, if you have a high-end zip code, you probably don't want to choose all IKEA furniture, right? Because if you want to be able to charge that premium nightly rate, you have to justify it with the experience you're giving your guest. Okay. And then sweat equity. How much are you willing to roll up your sleeves and DIY to install your Airbnb? Right. Again, lower end items can be great, but they will require your time to assemble. So I do have a free budget guide. There was a QR code a couple slides ago. And again, that'll give you an idea of the different price points for different levels of quality in different rooms. So
And,
it's kind of like a little puzzle, but it'll really help you to figure out how much it's going to cost. And that's if you're doing it yourself.
and I'm sorry to interrupt, Jennifer. I just wanted to make sure we flip back to it so that people can take a
Yeah,
quick photo.
absolutely.
Lucy, we just throw up the QR code for just a few seconds here while I just wanted to say first, while this is up, is I had a few aha moments as you were going through your presentation, Jennifer. So thank you. And one of them is, yeah, just being empathetic of where the guest is coming from, because probably depending on where you are, that journey is different. We are, for example, like we're just south of the U.S.-Mexico border in a little beach town. Sometimes it gets both Mexican and U.S. tourism, but if you're coming across the border that day, you're probably exhausted. And just kind of thinking about the little things we can put in there that say relax and we've got a view of the ocean. It's just like I had a few ahas, and I hope too that those that watch this have those as well. So if you do, please leave a comment either on YouTube or if you're on right now. Would love to get some of that shared. We do have a few questions. I'm going to hold those. I think we have about 5 minutes to talk about some of the tax. Like, I just want to kind of reflect some of the things you were saying from a tax perspective. The feedback we've gotten, Jennifer, is our community loves the tax, but they want kind of the expert approach outside of the tax world. So we're just going to reflect quickly. And please, if you have any perspective or a question, live question, Jennifer, you have full permission to jump in and ask. Is that fair game?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So Jennifer earlier was talking about having a spreadsheet from a logistical perspective. I think, where you've got each item when it's going to arrive, I think it's pretty cool to think about copying and pasting that spreadsheet and using it for tax purposes. So a lot of the times, I'll just firstly say that we do want to rely on an accounting system that has live bank feeds. Okay, early on in our journey when Airbnb was new, people were like, I love this personal credit card. I'm going to put everything on this personal credit card. And here's a spreadsheet with everything. And we just don't do that anymore. The IRS has caught on. They're starting to reject some of these deductions. So we always want to make sure that you're using a business credit card, plug to credit cards that have the best 0% interest rates. Maybe we'll link to those. But we do want to get a business credit card if we're going to put it on credit or a business bank account. So the interesting thought I had was that you can take that spreadsheet that has arrival times and you can include the detail and the amounts there so that when you do your accounting, you've got kind of a guide. You're like, what was this at Lowe's or what was this at Restoration Hardware, wherever you're shopping. And you'll have that spreadsheet to provide that detail, which you can put into your Zero, queuing Zero here, or your QuickBooks system. The most important thing to note when I think buying big furniture is that some of it is going to be subject to depreciation. Not going to get into that, but essentially you might not get the full deduction because the IRS says, hey, actually a really expensive refrigerator should be depreciated over 3 to 5 years. So just something to take note of when you make really big or heavy purchases. Typically that's how the code is written, is big, heavy things that have long useful life get depreciated. So on that spreadsheet, if you work with us or you work with your accountant, you might want to highlight some of the things that are the bigger purchases and make sure that you get some review on those things. Some of those things, the heavy and expensive items, could qualify for deductions under Section 179. So as I just said, that some of the stuff needs to be depreciated. Some of it comes with an exception where the IRS says, hey, we do want to incentivize you buying big things to get your tax bill down because it's good for the economy. Not everything, but some things. So Section 179 is the big solve for that. And if you work with us, we already work with making sure that you're looking at that because it's better from a tax perspective. Repairs and improvements, we didn't really get into that, but moving a wall is not going to be something that you can just deduct right away. So as we're talking about buying furniture, that all stuff falls under immediate expensing or short depreciation periods. If you're moving a wall, doing anything to the bones of the house, that even floors and tiles, those things are going to be depreciated over the life of the asset, typically 27 and a half years. So, if you take $1,000 divided by 27 and a half, you're going to get something much smaller. So it's something to be aware of. But there is a way, if you do spend more than $50,000 on improvements or repairs, you are going to want to get a cost segregation expert, which we have in-house, to break that up for you. So again, we're just trying to get the best tax strategy for what you're doing that's best for your rental. And the last point is energy efficient credits and deductions. We didn't really want to influence that too much, Jennifer. Maybe we'll bring it up in Q&A. But right now, anything to do with the windows, anything that we can qualify as an energy efficient credit carries with it a little tax credit. So we do want to make sure we're spreading or we're identifying those. And sometimes I would say the best way to do it, I love your idea, Jennifer, is if you had that spreadsheet and you indicated what it was for, your tax professional should be able to comb through it and figure out which ones qualify for the energy efficient credit. So good little collaboration there.
Yeah. And just real quick, if you're working with a designer, they should be able to provide that to you very easily. Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just got some kind of main points here. I mean, nothing that needs to stand out too much. We talked about the cost seg a little bit, but essentially it's the idea that if you make a big investment, typically tens of thousands of dollars, we usually start looking north of 50. That's where we're going to want everything broken out. So to your point, Jennifer, if you work with a designer, you're going to want get that detailed so that from a tax perspective, we can break out what's deductible versus depreciable. Last thing I'll say is, interior designing your home office can qualify as a tax deduction. So for those of us that, have our own home and then rent a different vacation rental, if you have an office that is exclusively for this business, we can look at deducting some of the square footage and some of the things that are purchased for, I don't know why I did air quotes. I literally mean purchase. There's no air quotes about that. Things that are purchased for the home office. And of course, a tax professional is going to help you double click and go deeper on any one of these things. But back to the fun stuff, back to the interior designing. What do we have next, Lucy, Jacob? Where do we go from here? Are we in Q&A yet? Closing thoughts. So we've consolidated this from, and give us feedback, Jennifer, please add to it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we want to prioritize, I think, the right investments in our place. You talked about durability, Jennifer. I think that's a great one. Even though you get tax deductions from buying stuff, I think from an investor perspective, we actually would rather buy stuff that lasts, that allows us to take home some more of that cash flow, doesn't have us rebuying mattresses and things like that.
Yeah, because if you think about it, you have to if you're swapping something out, you have to block off your place. If you're constantly swapping out furniture because it's cheap and or less expensive, you have to block off your place to go in and install that. You're losing money by doing that. So it's better. Durability is better.
Yeah, and probably too. I mean, you've got to deal with a bad review. Like I remember,
Yeah.
we stayed in Airbnb, and my wife sat in a chair we were supposed to work, and the chair broke, and we were laughing about it. She was so embarrassed,
Yeah.
and we told the guests, and they tried to charge us for it at the end, and we're like, guys, like your chair sucked. Like I don't know I
No,
don't know what you want me to do about that. But yeah, I
we
think
should be refunding you.
we were like, the nerve, the nerve. Of course, we give a lot of
Oh,
grace because we work with a lot of Airbnb hosts, but we're like,
yeah.
that's what not to do.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, I mean, will you talk on point number 2, and I'll close this out on point number 3, Jennifer?
Yeah, create a unique, memorable design experience to encourage repeat bookings, right? Again, you want people to feel like they've never been there before. There's so many places that are just decorated. Somebody went to one big box store, and I get it. I get why. Loaded up a semi and loaded up their Airbnb or did everything off of Facebook Marketplace. Again, I understand the sentiment behind that. But if you want your place to stand out, you really need to consider the design aspect of it. People are they're inundated with social media with beautiful spaces and beautiful homes and so many things that are aesthetically forward that you're not going to fool them anymore. Right? We have to put in a little bit of effort with designs for Airbnb. Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely, and I'll just add, like, you could, for those out there like me that are really numbers driven. I mean, I think what the numbers are really saying with occupancy going down, ADRs going down is, you got to stand out a little bit, right? So even for those that aren't as aesthetic, that's like the cool
Mhm.
word with Gen Z right now. Like it's
Yeah.
aesthetic, it's not aesthetic.
Yep.
You can lean in, and there's an economic benefit to standing out, and you can do a hybrid approach. Is kind of how you're shaping my thought. My thinking is, you can go to the big box stuff that for the things that don't matter if you're getting comfort and durability, and then you can have pops of memorability, not at a high cost. So I think that was a fantastic point. And then the last point I want to make, to plug you a little bit, Jennifer, and I would just say the interior design industry as a whole, is that this stuff is tax deductible. So it's an investment that is tax deductible, that has you like that has ROI into the future. And I mean, I would say immediately,
Mhm.
assuming you get the right photos, right? Um, so there you go. Those are our closing thoughts. In terms of the presentation, that kind of wraps it. I mean, I think from here we do have some questions. I've looked at them. They're all fair questions. Jacob, you want to read those out?
I sure do. Yeah, I got my own first question. Sorry, guys, I'm going to cut you, but Jennifer, no, appreciate you. Thank you so much for the insights. Question for you is, how do people get a hold of you? Do you provide any consultations for people if they do want some insights on how they can improve their Airbnb?
Yep. So my website is jenniferfarisinteriors.com. They can go check it out. I do have two. Once you get there, you just click on the vacation rental section of it. And then I
I think
give
sorry to
out.
interrupt. Let's
Oh,
just
yeah.
flip to it so that people can take a picture of your contact
There we
card.
go. Yeah, we don't need the Q&A thing. There we go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And that particular, yeah, that'll take you right to the vacation rental design page.
Mhm.
And it will show you the different services that I offer. I give out free quotes for anybody that's interested and to sort of go a little bit deeper. I do what's called like a consultation, like a walkthrough of people's homes as well. If they're not ready to really take the plunge or they really want to DIY, but they want sort of a launching point, I go through and I perform a full inspection on the home. Okay. So this is going to include not just design, but also any repairs and maintenance items that I notice. I'm not going in there like as a general contractor or a plumber necessarily, but anything that's glaring to me, I will take videos, I will take photos and put together a comprehensive report with my recommendations. And then if they want to take the next step and do design, great. But if not, I've given them some great suggestions that they can, then take it from there. I offer, that all the way up to the full service package. So
Great.
Awesome.
And just one thing I want to note there, you're in the 303. Love
mhm.
Denver, love Colorado. How do you work with someone, say, in Florida or Austin, Texas, or LA where Jacob is?
Yeah. And it completely depends. Zoom is great, right? We have Zoom meetings. If we want to keep it strictly e-design, it depends on what they can provide me as to whether or not I need to fly out there and be on site. So if they have drawings and good photographs, I can take it from there. But if not, then it might be something where I just hop on a plane, spend a day out there, get my own measurements and photos, and really get a feel for the space, and then create from there. So it just depends.
Yeah. And I certainly can imagine too for someone that wants to get a sense of how you work, maybe you start virtual and then the conclusion is just like, we got to get you out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are people that just know and they're like, I don't wanna deal with this. I want the full service design, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then there are people that just they don't know what they don't know. So I'm gonna help them figure that out, and sometimes they find it fun to do a little bit of DIY, and I'm happy to help you do that. So, yep.
No, I actually think you're right. We have clients that know they want to be an Airbnb, and we have clients that are like, "Hey, I've got a big capital gains event, and this is really a good year for me to invest a lot into
Mhm.
a short-term rental because the tax treatment's favorable." Where
Mhm.
they're just like, "I need this up in, I bought this place. I'm closing tomorrow. I want
Yeah.
this up and renting in 30 days. Jennifer, just get out here." So I'm certainly
Yeah.
think that's a reality when I think of our client base. Yeah.
Yes.
This is kind of a tax question for you, Miguel, but in part with Jennifer's service, if like a client does, let's say, decide to hire Jennifer full package next property, is that a tax deductible for professional help?
Well, it is. What I'm kind of thinking about is might need to look at some code if it's like a really big, really big project, because architect fees do get amortized. So they get spread out over time. There's some exceptions to this, which is where cost seg really comes into play. But I don't know that the same rules apply to interior design. So that can be a blog post
There we go.
for those editing this video.
Right.
Mark this timestamp.
Market, market. Okay, guys, let's get to your question. So the first one that I have noted here was, what are your thoughts about themed
Great
homes?
question.
Yeah, so this is gonna be another two-parter, so we can start there. Um, is that something that you have done? I have a 9-bedroom property in White Mountains in New Hampshire, that I'd like to renovate, the interiors in a way that attracts more families and ultimately get more bookings. Any advice appreciated? Thank you.
Yep. So themed homes, that is definitely gonna it goes a wide range, right? You could say theme is in like mountain theme, or you could say theme is in we're 30 minutes from Orlando, we're going full blown Mickey Mouse, right? It depends. I know I keep saying this, which is a boring answer, but it depends on your avatar. Does a themed home support, is that going to be a draw for who, is typically visiting that area? Then 100% go for it and dive in. I've seen like Barbie homes. I've seen, and I go back to the Disney because that's a big one. And Disney lovers are, I mean, over the top Disney lovers. So they would love to stay in a Peter Pan bedroom, right? So absolutely, if
Sorry.
your area supports it, 100%. Otherwise, you can be more subtle with themes, right? So again, Red Rocks. Like I would put a couple of cool coffee table books of the history of Red Rocks and maybe some concert photos framed on the walls, different things like that aren't so in your face, but that definitely make them feel like this is why I'm here, right?
Mhm. No,
Great
that's
point.
exactly. Also love that too. Yeah, I'd probably go with like a rock and roll theme if I was over in that neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Well, I think the caller, if you will, said they're in New Hampshire. So I'm just curious if any inspo stands out to you.
Mm,
Mm.
mhm.
In the mountains, right?
That's exactly right. Yep, they said it in the
Yep.
mountainous area.
Yep. So that's something where I would, when I like to research my areas, I go around to local stores and local shops, see what the people are like, see how, who's selling what, and really just kind of take it from there. So, if you're again trying to attract a wider crowd, but still want to, be in the mountains, like give that feel, I always like to keep words in my head like cozy, nature, and as I'm picking my items, if it doesn't really fit into that, and it doesn't have to be, again, over the top, but that's where you want, like, some fur throws and some pictures with, foggy forest or, again, whatever lends itself to that area. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
It's great.
Yeah, that's very good insights. This one's really funny. This might be my favorite question, but there,
Mm.
this one is there a good inexpensive mattress that you would recommend?
Such a great question. I actually saw that and I'm trying to think of the name. There is actually one on Amazon that I've ordered before and I can't think of it. But Dina, if I'm saying your name right, please email me and I will get that to you. No obligation. Just I would love to provide the one that I recommend. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, maybe we can do. It'd be great if you could share with us, because I would
Yeah.
also like to know, like your favorite couch. Like not even inexpensive. Like I'm just curious. Like is there a kind of couch type? You don't have to answer it here, but I would love to link to that into the show notes so people can go deeper and get a sense of kind of where you're at with
Yeah.
recommendations.
Sounds good.
All right, and then the last one is lighting is very important item. I'm a lighting specialist. Can you comment on this?
Lighting. I'm so glad you brought that up because I actually didn't talk about it, but I should have. As a photographer, I completely agree with you. Lighting is everything. So again, highlighting windows. When it comes to renovation, if you don't have a lot of windows, I would say that is a like wonderful place to spend your money. If you have a view, right? Or if you can create a view. Windows that let in natural light are amazing. But if you don't have great natural light, you need to supplement. So, ambient lighting is wonderful. Of course, overhead lighting is always very practical and easy. But if you can light up just one part of the room in case somebody else is relaxing over here, that's always great. So lamps can be a great decorative accessory. Yeah, I completely agree. Lighting is very important.
Mhm. Yeah, and that answers all the questions that we have.
Great.
I know that we have what 3 more minutes. So, Mr. Miguel, do you have any more questions for Miss Jennifer here?
Well, I mean, like I said, I think I had aha moments of my own. And in terms of how if people want to learn more, we have up on the screen, how to connect and follow Jennifer. This has been very insightful. We know our community is going to love it. So thank you again for making this work. A million thanks.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. If any more questions, feel free to email them. Do we have a slide with Jacob's information? I think we got a tax question or two. Um, there you go. Jacob at Shared Economy CPA. Jacob will field it. If you're not a client, it's okay. We can typically send you some kind of information. We can't advise if you're not. There's just a lot of liability around doing that. But if you do want to connect with us further, certainly do that. And we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Jennifer. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.